Good morning, everyone. We're going to try something a little different today. I'd like to welcome you along now to this virtual presentation. So the purpose of this virtual presentation is to continue exploring the inquiry question on the title of this slide. We're working our way through the first content descriptor for Module 7 in the biology syllabus, which is for students to describe a variety of infectious diseases caused by pathogens, including microorganisms and so forth. Today we are particularly going to consider pathogens in food, including their prevention and control, and how our immune system may respond to their presence, which links well to the content focus for this module. I recommend paying close attention to the detail covered in this presentation and taking notes wherever you can, as your next assessment task will draw heavily from this content. This assessment task will evaluate several outcomes with relation to the microbial testing of food samples, but we'll go through this in more detail in our next lesson. So we've mentioned some terms already that you guys are expected to be familiar with, like pathogens and microorganisms. But to help us along with the next few slides, we'll spend just a minute or two checking your memory is correct. Firstly, I want you to write a definition for each of the terms appearing on the slide now, using your own words. Please pause the slide until everyone has done this, and then press play to continue. Thanks for pausing the presentation so everyone could complete this activity. Here's a few pointers on what your answers should have included. So microorganisms are not visible to the naked eye, and there's several examples you could reference like bacteria. Pathogens are an organism capable of causing disease, either because there's heaps of them, or because they survive in their host and in transmission to another host without being destroyed. And an infectious disease is a disease caused by pathogens. Remember too that transmission of pathogens can be direct or indirect. So further in this presentation, we'll see how transmission of foodborne illness can often be indirect. The table on the right-hand side of this slide is also to act as a reminder for you, this time on how pathogens are classified. You may also see some of these terms pop up further in the presentation. So before we go any further, I want to tell you a little something about myself that is really relevant to this content descriptor. So you're used to seeing me as a teacher on the left, but once upon a time you were more likely to see me looking like the person on the right. So I've worked in quality assurance roles for several Australian food manufacturers. This photo was taken when I was working for Greens, who make a lot of the cake and pancake mixes you can buy on the shelves in Woolies and Coles. So one of the tasks I would perform in my quality assurance roles was to coordinate testing of products, not only to ensure they tasted great, but also to ensure they were safe to eat. We would specify limits of microorganisms in our products and ensure the products did not exceed these limits when they were tested. So let's have a look at some of these microorganisms in more detail. So there's lots of information on this slide, and you may need to read some of this in your own time, but we'll have a look at just a few pathogens in detail, particularly so you can appreciate the immune system response. Before I do that, I'd like to briefly discuss with you where this information was sourced from. It was compiled by the New South Wales Food Authority, who are responsible for regulating and monitoring food safety across the entire food industry supply chain in New South Wales, so from the paddock to the plate. There's also another really good publication online called Agents of Foodborne Illness that expands on this information. And that one was written by Food Standards Australia New Zealand, or FSANZ for short. FSANZ develop and administer the Australian New Zealand Food Standards Code at a federal level for regulators like the New South Wales Food Authority to implement and monitor. The FSANZ website has lots of other interesting information, like what foods have been recalled and why. So that's where I found some of the stats I'll mention in a minute. Both the New South Wales Food Authority and FSANZ have talented food scientists working for them, who have used scientific skills like processing and analysing data and information, so tables like this can be made available to us. So let's quickly look at the pathogen with the shortest onset time, which is known as Staph aureus. You'll probably be quite disgusted to know that one of the most common places this pathogen resides is in our nose and on our skin. It thrives between 7 to 48 degrees, which is why it may be common in uncooked products like cream pastries. Like many other pathogens, it can take between a few hours to a few days to test for its presence, depending on the testing method chosen. So have a think about what this might mean for a food manufacturer like those I have worked for. So let's switch now to the pathogen with the longest onset time and the longest name, Listeria monocytogenes. It's found in the environment and can thrive between minus 1.5 to 45 degrees, which means it can grow on food even in the fridge. Listeriosis, which is the name of the disease this pathogen causes, can be quite severe in immunocompromised people, like pregnant women. Between 2007 and 2016, it was the #1 microorganism associated with food recalls in Australia. There's lots of other things we could say about these pathogens, but I imagine you're all quite feeling a little bit queasy now and wondering what we can do to stop them being capable of causing disease in our food. So there's 3 main headings that control of disease from pathogens in food can fall under. I'll give you an example of two under each. So firstly, ways of preventing contamination can include keeping food manufacturing factories clean and maintaining personal hygiene. Ways to prevent decomposition and spoilage of food include appropriate storage and procedures that ensure food is used before it's no longer safe. And ways to prevent transmission include minimising contact with food. This one's really important for all those Staph aureus carriers out there. Another really important task I would perform in my quality assurance roles was to ensure these controls were in place, so we could be confident that when we tested our products, the results we received met our expectations. So guys, we've reached the end of our presentation. Here's a summary of a few points that we've discussed today. Please read through them when you get a moment and make sure that you're across these, particularly for your assessment task. Thanks for listening along.